Hi, this is Mariette Hartley, and you are listening to TV Confidential.
In the studio, working on their facial expressions and going over their lines, are Lily's guests, Richard Pryor, Bill Gerber,
Ed Robertson,
Judy
welcoming
Kahn,
you
and
back
special guest,
to
Alan
TV
Alda.
Confidential, radio talk show about television. They'll play part 2 of a conversation that began last week with Emmy Award-winning writer-producer Robert Iles. Bob's new book, Funny is Money, is a humorous, irreverent, deeply personal, and often very moving look at his 40-plus year career writing and producing comedy for network television, a career that not only included such meteoric highs as winning 2 Emmy Awards in a span of 4 years very early in his career, but which also had moments that left Bob wondering how to find his piece of ground in an industry that always seemed to be shifting. Funny is Money, available in hardcover, paperback, and as an ebook through our friends at Bear Manor Media, as well as Amazon.com. Part 1 of our conversation with Bob Iles, available on demand on the TV Confidential podcast. You may recall that as we ended Part 1, Bob and I were talking about his experience writing for Tom and Dick Smothers on their short-lived variety series for NBC that aired in the spring of 1975, an experience that was a mixed bag for Bob in the sense that on the one hand, he had a chance to write for 2 of his comedy heroes in the Smothers Brothers, but which was also marred by some of the anxiety he felt on a personal level at the time. We were talking about this before we started recording, Bob, that there are many reasons why I like your book.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that surprised me pleasantly about your book is the degree you talk about times such as when you had anxiety attacks and panic attacks.
Yeah.
Do I really belong in this industry? And I wrote this down, and I don't know whether one has anything to do with another or not, but you, in your first 5 years in TV, you won 2 Emmy Awards.
Yeah.
And yet, even though one would think, okay, 2 major awards, that would set me up. It was still a struggle for you to find your piece of ground in TV because you were getting good jobs, but they were not always jobs that fit your sensibilities.
Right.
So my question is, did the fact that you had the Emmy win and still were kind of up and down, did that contribute to the anxiety, or was it, or am I reading too much?
Oh, I don't know. I think there was a little bit of the irony of becoming, I guess you would call it, successful so very quickly and early on. In the successful meaning, we're getting work on network TV shows. I mean, through a bit of dumb luck or whatever, although, we had our talents and stuff, obviously. But the Emmy Awards and stuff, I mean, those are amazing. I mean, we were part of what I guess when I say the irony of getting started so young was that we weren't, we'd be with these people that are very seasoned and to us extremely talented and seem to be very facile, in their writing. And we were trying to match that in a weird way. I mean, we had our style and our stuff, which we were happy with when we were doing this radio show, but it didn't really necessarily translate, or in our minds didn't translate. None of that goofy stuff we didn't really translate into most of the TV shows we'd be hired for. So we were trying to fit into those situations. At least that was what we were doing at that time. We were just, it was totally on the job training. Like we got a job on Sanford and Son, for example, with Aaron Rubin. I knew the name. He's a giant. He did Andy Griffith and Gomer Pyle, and he was just this guy in the room. There he was. So and we didn't know anything about writing sitcoms at all. We stumbled across a story that he really sparked to, which was where a friend of Fred sees Lamont and Rollo go into what turns out to be a gay bar. So so the friend is telling Fred that God, they went into this gay bar. So then Fred's trying to determine whether Lamont's gay or not. And it's kind of a farcical episode. And Aaron really jumped on that. And that was like first thing we came up with. He said, come up with some stories. So that was the first one we told him. So then he gave us a couple of other episodes. He totally rewrote, but we got some credit for him. But that was my point, is that we didn't know what we were doing exactly, and he nevertheless kind of helped us a little bit. But I don't think he was thrilled, but he was happy with the writing. He was happy with the ideas. And similarly on other, just going forward, when I got into the Smothers Brothers show, that was like a monument. And I had won the one Emmy by then.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, you would think, well, I feel like a little secure that I'm going to keep working, but I don't know if that getting on that particular show or something just triggered something, and I was like, man, I was just like a wreck all the time, and I kind of showed up. I kept showing up, and they didn't get rid of me. I took a couple of weeks off at one point because I just couldn't go in there anymore. But eventually, therapy and stuff like that. And so I kind of chilled out. Meanwhile, the show just got canceled, so that kind of, ended that. And then we, meanwhile, had got Joe and Sons going. We already written the script for Joe and Sons, but before I had all these problems or issues, and so that went forward the next year. But
Yeah.
but and even then, like that was on the job training still. I mean, even though we had the idea for the show and they bought it, CBS bought it, and Kukoff and Harris come in to produce it, but they didn't hire us on the staff, Because, I mean, so there's things like that would happen to kind of, underscore, yeah, I knew it, I'm shit, I'm no good. And so but we wrote scripts and they were really good, and CBS said, hey, you should bring these guys on. So we've got
And
a staff of our own show.
yeah, and you kept showing up, which is half.
Yeah, I mean that's what you got to do. I mean, there's a sort of, it may just be personal, it may just be normal. I don't know. I was just a regular guy doing this stuff. That's the kind of the big umbrella of this whole book is, no, I'm not famous. I'm not Bochco or Spielberg, any of these people, but I'm just sort of like this suburban guy. I lived in the Leave It to Beaver neighborhood. I was the Beaver,
Yeah.
And I got into this racket because I was kind of funny, and all that, probably from early on. And I watched tons of comedy on TV. And so so anyway, it took a while before I kind of developed a real confidence in that my staying power and stuff. And nevertheless, we kept working. We were steadily working for at least 30 years. We were just steadily working.
You this is meant as a compliment. You're a lifer.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
No, you're a lifer. And and you don't become a lifer unless you are able to find ways to roll with the punches, which you did a lot more, which you did far more often than you didn't do. And that's why you worked as often as you did for 40 plus years.
Yeah, that's pretty much, we definitely got that part down where you kind of, suck up to the right people, or, we've had a few clashes with individuals, at least one that came back to burn me, and then that's why you don't make enemies.
That's right.
So no matter what, so it's a small, to us it was a small community. Well, not so, not that, it's now kind of dispersed now. I don't know if it's bigger, but it's dispersed now. But it's a very small community then, so everybody knew one another. People heard of me. I didn't know. Oh, you did? Okay. I didn't know them. But eventually I felt like I was allowed to stay there.
Yeah.
to allow to. I don't know if that's just a normal thing that people go through, but I certainly did.
Well,
Maybe
and
Stanley Ralph Ross never did, but I
Stanley Ralph Ross's career, I dare to say, did not last anywhere near as long as Bob Iles' career did. Bob Iles, our guest this hour, Bob Iles, Emmy Award-winning, two-time Emmy Award-winning writer and producer, began his career writing for Sanford and Son, Carol Burnett Show, Fernwood Tonight, many other classic shows from the 1970s. Bob went on to produce such popular sitcoms as Silver Spoon, Sister, Sister, Amen, many others. Funny is Money is the name of Bob's new book. Funny is Money, 39 true stories about how I made a ton of money writing TV comedy, takes you behind the scenes of some of the most recognized TV shows and TV stars the past 4 or 5 decades, but also shows how one of the keys to building and maintaining a career in television is forming and developing relationships with the various people you work with along the way. Funny is Money, available hardcover, paperback, and as an ebook through our friends Bear Manor Media, as well as Amazon.com. Stay with us, folks. We'll be right back.
This portion of TV Confidential is brought to us by our friends at Front Porch Realty, the community of realtors in the Northern Bay area of California that is committed to finding the solution that is best for their clients. Whether you're a first-time home buyer or looking to sell or lease your property in Northern California, call Karen Strain at 415-886-7411 or visit frontporchrealtygroup.com for more information on how they can help you.
Ed Robertson, thanking you for listening to the TV Confidential podcast. If you like what you hear, please hit the subscribe button so that you won't miss our next episode.
Hi, this is John Biney. You're listening to TV Confidential. Well, let's hear it for him. Come on out here.
Well, you batting 1,000 tonight, Rollo. First you take me to see a dumb movie, and then you take me into a bar where everybody's... Thanks a lot.
Hey, I didn't know, man. And besides, look at the whole thing as a sort of an adventure, man. Be bold.
That's the first time I ever been in a bar where all the brothers were sisters.
I want to circle back because you mentioned on-the-job training.
Yes.
One of the things you learned on Sanford and Son, and this is an important thing to learn for a guy in his formative years in television.
Mm-hmm.
If you write a character that ends up recurring on the show, you get a residual for that character regardless of whether you write for that character or not. That's a good thing to have in your arsenal.
That's right. We came up with Woody, who was the husband of Aunt Esther, because one of the subsequent episodes from the one that I mentioned before about the gay bar, that was called Lamont, Is That You? Cover title. And then we did another one. I don't remember if it was A Member of the Wedding or which was the first one we wrote with, where I think it might have been where Esther is breaking up the marriage of Fred, and for some reason, anyway, there was a family thing, and so we somehow or another introduced Esther's husband, Woody, and we knew that was, I think it was a fairly new thing in the Writers Guild where you'd get paid for character developments or invention, and I think that was a big one. But we bore that in mind from future episodes.
Absolutely,
yeah. So when we did Silver Spoons, we made sure we wrote the episode that introduced Alfonso Ribeiro as Ricky's friend, and so we were getting. I don't know where that's reflected in the residuals, but I guess.
Well, look, it's again the things you learn in your 20s, you bear in mind as you write in your 30s and 40s, and look,
it's all learning.
Television, like a lot of life, is often a crapshoot, but but if a character you create in the first 13 episodes of a show connects with the audience, to the point where the show runs 2 or 3, 4 or 5 years, I mean, that's an additional, residual.
Yeah, I
So it's
mean,
all good.
not doing it for free. Yeah, yeah, that's true. So we'd be mindful of that, and other writers would be too. But
Let's see. We're going to jump around a lot because when you experience and when you write about all the various changes in the industry, as Bob experienced in his career, I mean, uh, it's like any conversation. Sometimes you start with one, you start
yeah,
zigging, and then you end up zagging.
it's the weave. It's the weave.
Right. That's right. But we're kind of focusing at least initially on the first decade of Bob's career because that's where that's where a lot of the tools that he ended up relying on to build and thrive. That's where you learned all those tools, man. So, but one of the first shows that you really felt at home writing for was Fernwood Tonight. And there's a connection between Fernwood Tonight and your early radio career on KUSC, in that one of the people who appeared on your show more than once doing bits and whatnot was Harry Shearer.
Right. We first met Harry, who people probably know who he is, right?
He's the voice of everybody on The Simpsons except Marge and Homer.
Yeah, just about everybody in this. And he has a great voice. So
yes, he
always did. Anyway, we met Harry on our KUSC show when he came down with The Credibility Gap. Yes. That was the name of the comedy, which we were jealous of that. First of all, they were on KRLA, not on FM, and they did funny news bits and stuff. So it was Harry, Richard Beebe, and Michael. Was it Michael McKean or
David L. Lander?
David L. Lander, yeah. David and Michael didn't come down, but Harry and Richard Beebe and David L. Lander came onto our show as our guests, and they were giving us such a hard time. But later on, we developed a continuing friendship with Harry. We went out to lunch a few times. He came on other episodes of our radio show, and including one live version that we did. And so we remained pretty good friends with him. And, the thing about Harry that always struck me was that he, just in contrasting the careers, we'd take what we were given, and he would always be on the most hip stuff, including Fernwood Tonight, of course, but didn't do just the standard TV stuff. He had like this. He seemed to have these principles or something, but that it was admirable likewise. But I do remember he was on Saturday Night Live, and so that's perfect for Harry. And I thought he did a couple of good bits on there on Saturday Night Live, and during the time that he was on there. But I ran into him at some restaurant around that time, and I said, "Hey, man, was Saturday Night Live? Yeah, they don't use my stuff, and they ruin it." And he did this whole big complaint in true Harry fashion. But yeah, he was a great friend, and he was among the writers on Fernwood.
And one of the reasons why Fernwood proved to be a good fit, there are two reasons why Fernwood was a good fit for you, Bob. It was outside the box.
Right.
It was very much closer to your bailiwick,
right.
at the time as a writer and your sensibilities. And it had a lot of elements of, it wasn't sketch comedy. It was a 30-minute script, but there were many elements in each episode. And it required a lot of writers to write the individual bits for one guest or another. And that was a lot of your strong suit at the time.
Yeah, it was, because we could do these goofball. Our area, people had kind of their area. Harry would do the monologues for Martin Mull and Fred Willard. Hey, the first thing to go, man.
That's okay, man. That's what I'm here for. I'm here to help with prompting as much as possible. But if I can't think of the prompts, I'll fill them in post production.
Okay, great. Yeah, we would do like basically these basic interviews. It was like a Tonight Show setup,
Yeah.
but it was a small town Tonight Show. We had like, TV trays instead of a nice coffee table and stuff like that. And it was like a silly little town that they were doing this from, at least at first. But so we would basically do the weird. We had an author on who was, we had read that marijuana is good to treat glaucoma, and it was kind of in the news. So we had a guy come on, and he was first he's supposed to be a doctor. He's loftily talking about how this has really helped his patient, and then eventually it kind of turned to where, and I noticed that I tested your entire band, and they all have glaucoma, and they're all taking their medicine. So he's basically, like, he turned out to be like basically a drug dealer. But that was kind of the nature of the Fernwood Tonight, kind of the meat and potatoes of that. And then, of course, there'd be the characters from the town, and sometimes we would write for, like, Tony Rolletti, the bad lounge singer, and it was. And we became pretty good friends with Frank Duvall, who was Happy Kind, Happy Kind, and the Mirthmakers, their little band. And by the way, most of those band members were in the
They were bona fide musicians.
Yeah, Tommy Tedesco, the guitar. Yeah, they were and Duvall.
And Frank Duvall is a bona fide.
Yeah, music by Duvall. He was like, he did theme songs for endless numbers of shows and even films. And he has such a great look, this guy. And we put him on other shows ourselves. But it was such a great show. Like, it was so much fun to do. But it was, and Alan Thicke was the head writer.
Yes, Alan Thicke before he became Kirk Cameron's dad.
Yes, exactly. And who knew? But he handled it. I mean, this was like a strip show. It's on 5 nights a week, not live or anything like that, but a lot of material was churned out.
We'll pick up that thread on the other side of the break. Robert Iles is with us via Zoom. Robert Iles, Emmy Award-winning writer and producer, and the author is Funny is Money, 39 True Stories About How I Made a Ton of Money Writing TV Comedy. Take a quick time out. We'll talk some more with Bob when we come back here on TV Confidential.
Now you can fly anywhere in the world and pay discount prices on your airline tickets. Book a flight today to London, Paris, Madrid, or anywhere else you want to go. And pay a lot less guaranteed. Call the International Travel Department right now at Low Cost Airlines.
800-222-0511. 800-222-0511. Again, that's 800-222-0511.